Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast for another week. I'm here once again speaking about a different topic or some different grammar to help you to improve your English language skills, your listening, and so on and so forth. So welcome back once again. And if you've clicked on this video, you've already seen that I'm going to be speaking all about business English. And I want to ask you a question. What is business English? Because, to be honest, this is a bit of a marketing term for academies or companies that want to teach other companies English. But really, business English is just English with some additional formalities or expressions that are common in the corporate world. But really, you don't have to study business English. It's just all about improving your English in general while getting to know some phrasal verbs, some idioms, and some acronyms that are common for meetings, presentations, negotiations, and other scenarios which tend to happen when you are at work. But I have another question for you now. Do you work in English? And if you do work in English, how do you feel? Do you freeze? Do you get blocked? Or does everything flow quite well? Because I have many students who have experience working in English, and of course, this is a big advantage because think about the amount of time we spend at work every day. And if these 8 hours per day are spent being immersed in English, well, you have a big advantage. And this is one of the things that I always missed when trying to improve my Spanish or other languages, because I never actually got a job that would require me to use the language in the whole working day. And that's something I've always kind of missed out on. And I've always wished that I had had this experience of being fully immersed in another language at work. So yeah, let me know about you. Do you work in English or have you worked in English before? And if so, how was the experience? But today, of course, we're not going to be speaking about just generic English because we're focusing specifically on business English idioms. And many of these idioms can be used in normal scenarios, but some are very specific to the corporate world. And another reason why I chose this topic is because last week in my community, the British English Immersion Club, we had a bonus lesson where we were going over 10 different business idioms, using them in conversation, doing a gap fill, and, well, having fun whilst immersing ourselves in English. And if you are interested in joining my British English Immersion Club, I'll leave a link in the video description so you can check out my offer, or if you prefer private classes, you can also find a link to that in the video description as well. But without further ado, shall we get started? Or, better said, shall we get the ball rolling? Of course we should. And the way we're going to begin this podcast is that I'm going to read to you a dialogue between two people speaking about work. And in this dialogue, there are 20 or 25 business idioms. And I'm not going to explain them whilst I'm reading out the dialogue. So I want you to guess from the context and see if you can figure out what the idioms could mean. And after that, I will answer a conversation question with each idiom and tell you a couple of other examples. So hopefully By the end of this podcast, you will have improved your English listening skills whilst learning 25 business English idioms that you can use the next time you are working in English in your normal routine. So, let's kick off. Let's get the ball rolling. And I'm going to share my screen because I've got this usual PDF. And the PDF begins with, well, a dialogue. So let me scroll up to the top. Of course, feel free to read the dialogue at the same time, or you can just listen. And usually I'll mention that recently it's been really, really hot. Well, today it's a bit cloudy, it's a bit overcast, and it's spitting a little bit. It's drizzling a little bit, but I'm still sweating. And the reason for that is because I've just had a shower, a nice warm shower, and I've just got dressed. So maybe I'm still overheating a little bit from the shower, but I reckon I'll cool down fairly quickly. Okay, let's begin with the dialogue. Hey James, how's the new project going? Honestly, it's been a bit of a challenge. We're trying to get the ball rolling, but the budget is tight. Yeah, we're all feeling the pinch. Still, we've got to think outside the box if we want this to work. Definitely. If we just follow the usual methods, we won't move the needle at all. True. I heard the manager wants a quick win to show the board we're making progress. That makes sense. We can't afford to drop the ball now. No way. If we do, the whole team might feel the heat. Speaking of which, did you hear about the sales team? They really hit the ground running this quarter. Yeah, they're definitely ahead of the curve. We should learn from them. Agreed. If we don't, we risk missing the boat. And if we bite off more than we can chew, we'll burn out before the end of the month. Good point. We've got to keep our eye on the ball and focus on what matters. Right, let's not try to reinvent the wheel with every task. Exactly. If we can get our ducks in a row, we'll have a smoother process. I'll bring this up in the next touch base with the team. Great. Let's circle back on this after the meeting. Perfect. Hopefully, we'll all be on the same page by then. And if not, we'll need to go back to the drawing board. Worst case, we put it on the back burner and focus on something else. I'd rather not. I think it has legs if we give it the right attention. Me too. But we've got to cut to the chase and deliver results. Absolutely. Let's not drag our feet. We've already missed the deadline once. No more delays. It's time to step up to the plate. Agreed. Let's do this. So there we have that very, very intense dialogue, including lots of business English expressions. And yeah, of course, some of them were a little bit forced, but in general, they're all pretty good idioms that we're going to figure out the meaning of right now. And one by one, we're going to go over these 25 business idioms. Let me have a little drink, because it feels like I've got a frog in my throat. And the first expression is to get the ball rolling, which is one that I've already used a few times today. And simply put, to get the ball rolling is to start something, especially like a project or a task. For example, let's get the ball rolling on the new proposal. Let's get the ball rolling recording this podcast. And now a conversation question. What's the first thing you do when you get the ball rolling on a new project? Well, I would say that the first thing I do when I'm considering starting a new project is that to get the ball rolling, I will study the pros and cons, and I will do a little bit of research to see if, first, this project is worth it, and if it's a viable project. And then after that, I will think of common questions like how much will it cost? How long will it take? What is the advantage? What is the disadvantage? How difficult will it be? Can I do this project on my own, or do I need to hire someone else? So these are all the things that will go through my mind when I'm thinking about getting the ball rolling on a new project. Now, number 2, this is another common business English idiom, and it is think outside the box. And it means to be creative or to think in an unconventional way, an innovative way. For example, we need to think outside the box to solve this issue. And a conversation question. Can you give an example of when thinking outside the box helped you at work? Well, I'd say first of all, in my case, I usually think outside of the box just before I go to bed or when I go for a walk. This seems to be the time when my brain is doing the most action, or at least with these creative tasks. Because during the day, I tend to be very busy and I'm very productive. I don't really have time to just think and be creative. But usually, when I can't sleep, I'll be thinking about ideas and strategies and things that I could do to make a difference by thinking outside of the box. And the other scenario is, as I said, if I'm going for a walk, I'm listening to something, at the same time, I'll be imagining how I could think outside the box to launch a new product or to add more value to my existing services. So yeah, I usually think outside the box when I'm trying to get to sleep or when I'm going for a walk. Now, number 3, the expression is move the needle. And you know, a needle is the thing that you use for injections, like vaccines, for example, that you will inject yourself with a vaccine using a needle. But to move the needle, this expression means to make a noticeable difference or improvement. So another example is that I listen to this Leeds United podcaster, and he uses this expression a lot. And he's thinking about these signings, these good footballers that we could sign in order to move the needle. In other words, to transform Leeds United from a championship side into a premiership side. But here's another example. This new strategy should really move the needle. It should make an improvement or a difference. And a question. What strategies have you used that actually moved the needle? I would say, personally, again, speaking about my own business at the moment, a strategy that I've used to move the needle was changing my website provider. And this is a very recent change that I made a few months ago, but I was noticing that maybe my booking system wasn't as intuitive and user-friendly as I initially thought it would be. And I was unable to customize many things that I wanted to customize, like temporary offers, also having a monthly subscription. So there were quite a few things that I wasn't 100% satisfied with. And based on that information, I was thinking outside the box and looking into other possibilities and changing my website and booking system to more of a community thing, I think moved the needle because it allowed me to attract more students and improve the overall offer so people could have more value for less money. So yeah, to sum up, changing my website and creating my community really moved the needle. Excellent. Number 4. It is quick win, which, to be honest, I don't know if it counts as an idiom, but more or less, we'll go over it anyway. And a quick win is just an easy or fast success that shows progress. For example, we need a few quick wins to boost morale, to improve the mood of people. And quick wins would be if you are stagnating as a company or as a department and the news has been quite negative recently. You need something to, get you going again, to make you feel more productive again. This could be something simple and fast, and it provides you success. It would be a quick win. And here's a conversation question. Why are quick wins important in business? Well, I don't know. I'm no expert. But I would say, off the top of my head, that in business, things can turn around very quickly. Things can change very quickly from being successful to a failure. And I believe that the team atmosphere and the vibe and the morale are really essential to making sure that everything stays on the right path. So if you have had negative news after negative news, people are going to be stressed. And when you're stressed, you're probably not going to perform to the best of your ability. So you might need just something small, insignificant to make you feel better and restore belief. It's like with sports again. I always go to football, but let's say a striker, a forward, hasn't been able to score any goals in a long time. He's obviously going to be a bit depressed. He's going to be panicking, and he's going to be making mistakes that he didn't used to make because the pressure has been rising. All he needs is a quick win. What he needs is maybe one goal, and then from that goal, he'll start scoring more and more and more, and he'll start converting these chances that previously he was missing. He just needs a quick win, a small, quick success that will then boost your long-term performance. Okay, number 5. It is drop the ball. And to drop the ball is to make a mistake, really. It is to fail to take responsibility. But simply put, if you drop the ball, you make a mistake. You mess up. You screw up. As phrasal verbs. And an example. I dropped the ball by forgetting the deadline. Uh-oh. And a conversation question. What do you do when someone on your team drops the ball? I'd say, first of all, if someone on my team drops the ball, they need to be held accountable. So I would ask them, like, hey, Sam, what happened? Why did you forget the deadline? How did this happen? And then, depending on how they answer, I'll probably ask other questions. Maybe like, did you know the deadline was today? That way we can check if they were aware. Hopefully they own it and take responsibility and then promise that it won't happen ever again. But if not, I'd ask follow-up questions. And for example, I would say, did you need more time? Or were you not supported enough by the rest of the company and colleagues? Like, could I have done anything to help you? And if all of these questions are responded with like no, then I'd say, okay, that's a warning. It can't happen again. Obviously, it was your fault, so you need to take ownership for it, and you need to make up for it. You need to compensate for dropping the ball. That's what I'd say. And I hope none of you have been dropping the ball recently. Okay, number 6. Feel the heat. And if you are feeling the heat, you are under pressure. For example, she's really feeling the heat from upper management. And a conversation question. How do you deal with pressure at work? What do you do when you are feeling the heat? Well, in fact, last week I was feeling the heat a little bit. And the reason for this was that there were a couple of people in my community who didn't have time to attend the classes. So unfortunately, they decided to drop out and cancel their subscription. And of course, I said, well, it's a shame. No problem. I hope to see you return to the community as soon as possible. But as a result, yeah, I mean, it's my business. I was feeling the heat. I was under pressure. But there wasn't a lot I could do apart from replace these people and look for another couple of people who wanted to join the community. So I sent some emails to people who had previously expressed an interest in joining, and in the end, it was fine because 2 people dropped out and a few other people joined. So it was positive overall, and the reason why people dropped out was just because of time constraints and not because they were unsatisfied with the service, I hope. But I was feeling the heat, and my way of responding to this was taking it on as a challenge and thinking, okay, no problem. It happens, you know, I have to adapt. I have to think on my feet and find a solution. And I believe I did that quite well. I found a solution, which was replacing these people. And in the end, perfect, all good. But in any job, you're always going to be confronted with obstacles, hurdles, problems that you'll have to sort out. And I think you have to rise to the challenge. And it's almost a rewarding feeling when something negative happens and you're able to turn it around and switch a negative into a positive. So I'd like you to think with the same attitude that if something happens, see it as a challenge and see it as something that you can grow from and learn from in order to be able to avoid this problem in the future. And that way you can thrive under pressure. You can perform well under pressure when you are feeling the heat. Okay, number 7. It is hit the ground running. And this expression, to hit the ground running, is to start a task or a job with lots of energy, with lots of willingness and readiness. You start something, imagine that you are arriving from a plane and you have just got a parachute, and then when you hit the ground, you start sprinting. This is a good way of looking at hitting the ground running. Let me tell you another example. The new employee hit the ground running on day 1. In other words, they started the job really, really well. Now, a question. Have you ever hit the ground running in a new role or task? I'm not sure, to be honest. I think I can be a little bit nervous at the beginning of a new job. But as a teacher, I'll always use my favorite games and activities in my first class with new students. So then usually we'll get on quite well. and hopefully they will see that I'm prepared and qualified for the position, so that allows me to hit the ground running. If I think about my time in Australia, I was working at these big schools and academies, and it was quite a reputable place. And I remember the interview process was quite complex. And for my first class, I had 20 different students from all around the world, and I used my go-to games. So all of the students suddenly were loving it. They were like, oh my God, this is amazing. Best teacher ever, right? So I think that usually in my first class, I will hit the ground running because I can use activities that I know are practically guaranteed to be a success. So, yeah, I have hit the ground running in a new role or task, for sure. Now, moving on to number 8. It is ahead of the curve. And if you are ahead of the curve, you are more advanced or more innovative, or basically, you are just ahead of the rest. You are superior to other people, usually by being more advanced or innovative. For example, this tech keeps us ahead of the curve. This technology keeps us ahead of the curve. A conversation question. What company do you think is ahead of the curve in your industry? Well, I'm not going to say in my industry. I'm going to make it more generic. And I would say that Microsoft is ahead of the curve. And of course, I have an iPhone, I have a MacBook, so I'm a bit of an Apple guy. And I think this is the case for a lot of people nowadays. And I believe that the hardware of Apple is better than the hardware of Microsoft. But if we go beyond that, Microsoft was ahead of the curve to invest a lot of money in artificial intelligence. And I believe that Microsoft owns a significant chunk of OpenAI, which is the provider, the company, which has ChatGPT. So by seizing this opportunity, you could say that Microsoft is ahead of the curve. And we could also maybe say that Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, etc., are ahead of the curve in investing a lot of money in the metaverse. Of course, these companies, the holding company is Meta. And we will see. Only time will tell if this actually pays off or not. But Mark Zuckerberg clearly believes that the future of gaming and social media is through the metaverse. And they already changed the name of the company to Meta instead of Facebook. So this is a very evident bet on the future of the metaverse. But at the moment, we heard about the metaverse a few years ago, and since then, there hasn't really been any obvious progress. So we'll see. But if it turns out that in a few years everybody is using the metaverse, then Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook really were ahead of the curve. Goal number 9. Miss the boat. And this is to miss an opportunity. For example, we missed the boat on that deal. In other words, we missed an opportunity by not taking advantage of that deal. And a conversation question. Can you recall a time when you missed the boat on something important? Can I recall a time when I missed the boat? I don't know, really. Let's say that I started working as an English teacher in Seville, working for a pretty bad company where the salary was really low. And if I had known more about the industry, I would have applied for other companies that I knew about years later. So you could argue that maybe I missed the boat by not applying for the right academies. But you live and you learn, and you gain experience to position yourself better in the future. But maybe I missed the boat. An example I always give is about Bitcoin. I missed the boat by not investing in Bitcoin 20 years ago. And I could say the same about Meta and Microsoft. That if I had invested in these companies 20 years ago, then, wow, I'd be minted. And minted means very wealthy, rich. Okay, number 10 is bite off more than you can chew. And it is to take on more responsibility than you can handle. For example, I bit off more than I could chew by managing 2 projects. I couldn't handle both of them at the same time, so I bit off more than I could chew. A conversation question. Have you ever bitten off more than you could chew at work? Well, a couple of months ago, I made another profile, which was called Anglais avec Louis, which is English with Louis, but in French. And my idea was that I would make kind of beginner content teaching English using French, like I do with English con Louis, which has done pretty well, but I already speak very good Spanish. And my motivation was to try and kill 2 birds with 1 stone by making content in French and English to improve my French, whilst also expanding my audience further. But I think, at least for the time being, I have bitten off more than I can chew. Because I'm already so busy. I don't think I've got time for another profile without hiring an editor or someone else. So in that case, I think I have bitten off more than I can chew. And as a result, I haven't made a single video for that account. Maybe I will in the near future if I miraculously have more free time, which I doubt it. But at the moment, that profile is kind of on the back burner. So it's not priority at all. It's on the back burner. All right, let's keep going. Number 11, keep your eye on the ball. If you keep your eye on the ball, you stay focused. You stay concentrated. For example, you have to keep your eye on the ball during busy periods. And a question. What helps you keep your eye on the ball when working remotely? Well, the way that I manage to keep my eye on the ball is that, first of all, I enjoy what I do. Secondly, I need to be productive in my routine, or I don't feel satisfied with myself. And I think it makes me a little bit, I don't know, more sad if I feel like I'm not squeezing every moment from my routine. So that really does help me to keep my eye on the ball, because I'm quite good at staying focused and having a to-do list at the start of the day or the week and ticking things off as I go along. And this action of ticking things off is really satisfying, because it's like, okay, I've done this, I've done that, I've done the other thing. Go me! Well done! Well done, Lewis! So it's not that hard for me to keep my eye on the ball. It would be if I worked in a company where I didn't get on well with my colleagues or my boss, then it'd be a challenge. But right now, it's no problem at all. Now, number 12. It is reinvent the wheel, which I believe is quite similar in many languages. If you reinvent the wheel, you waste time creating something that already exists. Or at least you reinvent the wheel is usually used in a negative sense to say, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Like, we don't need to really think outside of the box and create something innovative. For example, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Use last year's template. Do it the same as last time. No worries. And can you give an example of when someone tried to reinvent the wheel unnecessarily? Now, honestly, I'm not sure, and I think it's quite a difficult question to answer. But there are examples of, again, Meta, Facebook. Basically, in many cases, they don't need to reinvent the wheel. They don't need to completely change something and revolutionize an industry. And the reason why is, well, because their tactic for growth has been just to take over other successful smaller companies before they become too powerful. If we look at Instagram, Instagram was bought by Facebook when it was just an application for sharing photos. And, well, it was competition, direct competition for Facebook. So they saw that as a threat. And they must have said to themselves, let's just buy them out. Let's just buy the company. And that way, they don't need to reinvent the wheel. They just use their financial might to become the owner of that company as well. If you can't beat them, join them, really. All right, number 13. Get your ducks in a row. And if you get your ducks in a row, you get organized. For example, let's get our ducks in a row before presenting to the client. Let's get sorted. Let's get organized. And a question. What systems do you use to get your ducks in a row before a deadline? Now, I don't really have deadlines. At least, I haven't really given myself many deadlines yet. But I believe that for companies, you need to have deadlines, and teams need to get their ducks in a row in order to meet deadlines. If you have new employees within a team, you need to make sure that they know what they're doing. So you need to mentor them. You need to train them. You need to make sure that there is clarity within the team of whose responsibility is each thing. So that's something that you need to do to get your ducks in a row. And big multinationals will often hire some kind of strategist or advisor to improve systems in a company to be more productive, more profitable, and ensure that teams have got their ducks in a row. So get your ducks in a row is to be organized. Now, number 14 is touch base. And this is to briefly check in or communicate. For example, let's touch base tomorrow morning. Like, let's chat. Let's update ourselves on what's going on. And a question. How often do you touch base with your manager or team? Now, I'm a lone wolf, so I don't have a team or manager or anyone. But in my last job, I used to touch base with my manager once a week for a proper meeting, and we'd be in contact on Slack on a regular basis. But to be honest, I didn't really have much to say or do whenever we were touching base. So I was always against the idea of having a fixed weekly meeting because it felt to me like a waste of time. Like I didn't have much to say, really. So I think it's important to touch base, but only when there's actually stuff to discuss. If not, many people will have meetings just for the sake of having meetings, which is a bit of a waste of time, if you ask me. Now, number 15 is circle back. Nice phrasal verb. And circle back is to return to a topic later, like to review something. For example, sorry about that. For example, we'll circle back to that after the meeting. And a question. Is there a topic you've been meaning to circle back to this week? Is there a topic you've been meaning to return to this week? And yeah, after this podcast, I think I'm going to respond to some emails because sometimes there are people or companies that will reach out to me. And I usually take a while to respond to emails if it's not important or urgent. If it's important and urgent, I respond straight away, immediately. But if not, I feel a bit lazy about responding. So then I leave it for moments when, for example, I am uploading one of these videos. So what I'm going to do after this podcast is I'm going to circle back to responding to some of my emails because it's something that I often put off. I postpone. Okay, number 16. On the same page. This is a really nice common one that we use all the time. And if you are on the same page as someone, it means you agree. You're on the same wavelength. You understand something in the same way. For example, we're finally on the same page about the timeline. And a question. How do you ensure your team stays on the same page during a project? Now, I have said I'm a little bit anti-meeting, but in order for a team to stay on the same page, you might need regular meetings just to double check that everything is going according to plan. And if not, a team chat, like on Slack or WhatsApp or whatever, is definitely going to be needed because people know who has to do what, when they have to do it, why they are doing it, and so on. So yeah, meetings and group chats, I think, are a necessary evil for staying on the same page with a project. Now, number 17, it is go back to the drawing board. And this means to start over, to start again, because there was a failure or a mistake, or you're not convinced with the future of the project. To go back to the drawing board. Like the drawing board, like, you know, a board, a whiteboard, a blackboard, for example. Our idea didn't work. So it's back to the drawing board. And a question. Have you ever had to go back to the drawing board after a project failed? Decisions. Well, again, in my last job, we used to try to do master classes with potential clients. So we would offer them a free class with other companies. And that way it was a bit of like a networking activity. And if they enjoyed the class, they would consider having more regular classes with us. And yeah, it went well at the beginning. But then maybe I think people didn't value the fact that it was free. And that can be a bit of an issue that people sometimes, if they see that something is free, they don't see the value in it. They don't really make the most of it or appreciate it because of that very reason, that it's free. So we had to rethink the situation, and we stopped doing these masterclasses. And then we were thinking about other possibilities of, again, offering free classes with the hope that then they would become regular clients. But with these masterclasses, it worked really well at the beginning. But then people lost interest, and we had to go back to the drawing board. We had to start over and rethink our strategy. Cool. Number 18, an expression I used earlier, naturally. Put on the back burner. And if you put something on the back burner, you imagine you have a hob, a stove, a cooker, and you have a couple of burners at the front, and usually a couple of burners at the back. So if you're cooking, and then you're going to stop cooking, or simmer it down, you might leave this pan on the back burner. So to put something on the back burner is to postpone it or delay something. For example, let's put that idea on the back burner for now. Let's leave it and reconsider it further down the line. And a question. What's something at work that's been put on the back burner lately? Now, I'll tell you something. You might not care. I'm not sure. But I guess in a way, this podcast is a platform for me to get things off my chest whilst teaching you expressions and improving your English. At least I hope so. So if you made it to this far in the video or podcast, then a round of applause. I salute you. But something that I've been toying with and considering doing for the last few weeks, well, by the time this comes out, the last month or so, is making an artificial intelligence version of my voice with ChatGPT technology so that people can pay a small amount of money to speak to ChatGPT with my voice. And it's something I'd like to do because I can only teach so many classes per week. Time is a limit. And I also want to make sure that I make lots of these videos. So I have to prioritize. That's why I was thinking about something that I could create, like a course or a teaching, let's say, application or platform that was me without actually being me. So I was thinking about creating an artificial version of myself so people could speak to me on a regular basis. But after looking into how much it would cost, and then thinking that if people paid for it, they wouldn't be able to speak for that long with me because of the nature of ChatGPT limits. So it is very possible to do this, but I realized that I'd need a lot of people paying for it, or people paying more than what I think it's worth in order to use it, for it to be profitable for me. So I've put it on the back burner. I'm looking into cheaper solutions so it can be cheaper for my students, but at the moment, the numbers don't quite match. It doesn't really work. So making an AI version of myself has been put on the back burner for now. We'll see. We'll see if I prioritize it in the future. And if you like this idea, let me know in the comments, and maybe that'll convince me to bring this thing into reality and make it real. All right, next one, number 19. It is to have legs. And if something has legs, well, it has a possibility of success. It could succeed and continue growing. Usually it's used for ideas or plans or strategies. For example, this campaign really has legs. People love it. It has a chance of succeeding. And a question. What's a recent business idea you think has legs? Like I said, related to the previous point, the idea of an AI version of me, maybe it has legs. But I'm skeptical still. So I'm thinking about it day and night. But I don't know if it has legs. So let me know. Do you think this idea has legs? All right, and number 20. Cut to the chase. And this is to get to the point, to skip the details and get to the main point. For example, let's cut to the chase. What's the decision? And a conversation question. Do you prefer meetings that cut to the chase or explore all details? As you can probably guess, I prefer my meetings to be short and sweet. So for that reason, I much prefer people to cut to the chase. I want them to just get to the point, you know? Okay, let's do the last few expressions nice and quickly. Number 21 is drag your feet, and this is to delay or procrastinate. For example, they're dragging their feet on signing the contract. They're delaying it. And number 22, miss the deadline, which, well, I'm sure you can guess, is to fail to finish something on time. For example, we missed the deadline because of the server crash. Number 23, step up to the plate. This is to take responsibility or action when needed. For example, she stepped up to the plate when the manager quit. And here, the plate is optional. We can just say she stepped up. She stepped up when the manager quit. Number 24 is burn out. And this is to become exhausted from working too much. He burned out after working 70-hour weeks. Of course, 70 hours? Jeez, he doesn't have time to sleep. Now, last but not least, it is feel the pinch. The pinch. And this is to experience financial difficulty. For example, we're feeling the pinch after the budget costs. And that's it, folks. Apologies if I rushed the last 5, but I'm afraid I've got to go, and I've got a class in 5 minutes. So I had to speed it up. I had to cut to the chase. I needed to get to the point. But let me know if you enjoy business English content. I have loads of experience teaching business English. Of course, as I said earlier, business English is just normal English with some expressions, phrasal verbs, and acronyms. Yes, in some scenarios, it can be a little bit more formal, but not necessarily. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your mates, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye!